Welcome in to All Things Odd. I'm Dr. Natalie Phillips.
I'm Dr. Hannah Galloway.
And I'm Whitney, the resident.
All right, we're going to have you guys go over the YouTube channel.
YouTube, yes. So we've got 69 subscribers. I think that's the same number as when I said last time. But I actually had one of our patients come in and he was like, you should do some sort of like a publication or something where you tell people about all these new things. I was telling him about the captions on the iPhone. And anyway, I was like, funny you ask, because you can go to our YouTube channel and you can watch all these old episodes and pick our brains about certain audiology topics. So you can go on here and look at even our older videos. And there's fun thumbnail images so you can tell what they're about. But this is a good spot to go get all of our videos. We try to be here every week, but if the holidays fall or we're out or something, you can go here and watch an old episode.
Yeah, and share these episodes out. So that will be sitting there, and we're going to talk about our fun topic today. So
there's 95 videos. I just noticed 95. Yeah, that's a lot.
That's pretty good, guys. Yeah.
Are we going to do something special for the 100th video? Are we all going to dress up like we're 100?
We might have to. Okay.
They do the 100th day of school and they all dress
like
up.
Little old ladies.
Yeah. Now somebody's going to have to remind me because this will be, I guess, 96. So only 4 more. So,
yeah.
Okay. So tomorrow's Valentine's Day. So we thought we'd kind of do a love show. So I was going to start it off with just kind of noticing how, let's say a couple comes into our office and they sit down and they want us to test one or both hearing, right, the ears or the hearing. And we do the hearing test and it comes out, but it comes out normal. Typically then we would take them out of the booth and say, okay, like I say, I've got good news and bad news, right? The good news is I can hear okay. But the bad news is now you got to deal with your spouse because now you're going to have to explain that it's not really hearing loss and it could possibly be maybe just not paying attention or selective listening or whatever it is. So I know that we've all kind of had that happen. And I'm just curious, as we kind of described this couple that came in, who did you think that I put in, like when you're imagining it, who did you think I put in the booth? Like, was it the husband or was it the wife? I'm just curious. So I was going to ask Dr. Galloway and then ask Whitney, as I was describing this couple that comes into our office and we're testing them, who do you think sat in the chair on the outside and who did we put in the booth?
Well, I was actually thinking that it was one of those situations where they come in together and they both get their hearing tested. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I guess the husband usually tells the wife to go first. Maybe that's just like courtesy. I don't know. Some couples don't come back together though. So I guess I would think the wife would go first.
Okay.
Oh, I was thinking the man.
That's what I was thinking too.
But I've had that more recently. Where I've had both, but I would say a little bit more recently it was the husband who came on behalf of his wife's request. However, his wife was not there.
Right.
So I did request her appearance at his next appointment just so we can talk.
Typically, I would imagine that scenario to be where the man is here because the wife was nagging the man to get in and get his hearing tested. So I thought that was kind of funny to just start off with that because we have been here and we do recommend that you bring your communication partner so that way we can go over results. And sometimes it's helpful, to explain like, okay, either they have a hearing loss or they don't have a hearing loss. And then what can you do from there? So this is kind of all talking about love and couples and relationships because hearing loss can have a, impact on relationships. So we have a new watcher, I believe, from YouTube. This person is tuning in on YouTube saying hello. So I just wanted to put that up to say hello back. So thank you, because this is a live show. So again, because this is live, as we're talking, put up your comments if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or even LinkedIn, and also share with us a little bit more about who you are, and if you've got information to share. So this person that's tuning in says, I'm single-sided deafness. That's interesting, because I just finished with the single-sided deafness patient right before we hopped on this show. And so we had talked about this poor person who had single-sided deafness. So what that means is that they're hearing pretty good on one side, like not usable hearing on the other. This particular patient that I had right before the show had a hearing aid on one side that was wearing it since 2019 and hated it because he was wearing it on his poor ear. And once we did the test, I explained to them, yeah, I can totally see what you're saying, because with single-sided deafness, you don't hear very well out of one side. And that can also affect the way that you have relationships, because you're always going to have to run over to one side, to the better side of whether you're driving or the passenger seat, or you're going on a walk or whatever it is. And so understanding the type of hearing loss you have is super important, because this also can affect your relationships as well. So that's what we're here to talk about today. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sharing your type of hearing loss. We're going to dive in today about our topic about how the impact of hearing loss, what it does to relationships. And so we're going to start off with some facts. And I did some digging. I know this goes back like 15, 16 years to 2008, but there was a really good hearing review article that had some statistics that we wanted to include, and we have some other statistics as well. So in this hearing review article, 47.8% of baby boomers who have spouses that have hearing loss admit that their marriages have actually suffered because of hearing loss. And other findings that we found from this article in 2008 shared that 64.8% of people felt annoyed when their spouses couldn't hear them. 16.4% feel ignored. 8.1% actually feel sad or hurt. And 83% say that if they were to talk louder, their spouse does better understanding them. Well, that makes sense. But as they did this survey, this is what they found. And it kind of makes me sad just finding these percentages about, forget the percentages, but just think about what we just said. So people feel annoyed, ignored, hurt, and sad, right? And so that can have an effect on relationships. And this was back in 2008, so 15, 16 years ago. And so we have some really good other statistics that Dr. Galloway and Whitney are going to share as well. But just kind of think about that back in 2008, 15, 16 years ago, that's what was going on. And we're still not getting people into hearing aids when we need them, right? So we want to share some statistics, and then we'll kind of talk about some strategies as well. So I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Galloway.
Yep. So this is a newer one. So this is 2021. So this is post-COVID, just a few years ago, by the Institute for Healthcare Policy and Innovation. It was a national poll. Indicated that 80% of Americans over 50 years old said that their primary care physician had not asked them about their hearing in the past 2 years. So, and I have had patients, come in and say that. They're like, yeah, I go to the doctor and they check this and they check this, but, I haven't had my ears checked. And so sometimes they do have like hearing screening technology or something at the primary care office, which is better than nothing. It's not good to not bring it up at all. And, you could always refer patients over to have their hearing tested. So that study also found 77% had not had their hearing checked by a hearing professional. So that tells you that there's a need here. And now Medicare, will cover your hearing test as long as we have like your referral or you sign this form that says that you're waiving that. And so at least the assessment part, we shouldn't have this much trouble. We should be easily able to assess people and then go, okay, what are we going to do about hearing aids? But the fact that, people are just not getting referred over, that's a big, kind of glaring error, I think.
Yeah. And it's not pointing fingers at your primary care physicians.
No.
I mean, they have a lot of things that they're looking at when they do your annual physical. So we want to put it on you to be your best advocates, right? So like if you're thinking about checking your eyes every year, your teeth, your heart, things like that, your cholesterol, like think about checking your hearing as well, right? When you reach a certain age. So,
and even if you're not having trouble, it's nice to have a hearing test before you start having trouble, so we kind of know where you were. Otherwise, it's just a big, it's like we can only know what it looks like now that you're having all these problems. So it's nice to have one before the patient is, complaining of issues.
Right. Awesome. Whitney, what do you have?
A national poll on healthy aging actually found out that men were more likely than women to say they had a recent hearing or screening evaluation. I don't know. Maybe that's because their wives made them have it. I'm not sure.
I was going to say maybe employment, like they OSHA mandated, like they work someplace where they have to.
Yeah,
I don't know. That was my thought.
That could be another one. People ages 65 to 80 are also more likely to have had a screening or an evaluation. So that's good. But we're still have 72% of the population that's not getting tested. So I think it, goes back to what Dr. Phillips said about, being an advocate. I tell patients, it's always better to know, like Dr. Galloway said, if we know where you were at today, and maybe you're not having issues, and then that's great. And then maybe, we keep monitoring it. And then when you do have some issues, we're able to address it sooner. So I think, it's like Dr. Phillips said, it's a good thing just to add to your health regimen. You use your ears every day. I just don't think we realize it, but obviously we are using them, and they are an important part of just maintaining a healthy lifestyle. So,
yeah. So those are the facts, right? And so now we want to provide solutions to being able to communicate better. So going back to that first story of the couple comes in, right? And one might be pushing the other, or maybe both of them want to get their hearing tested. So we're going to share with you some communication strategies. And there's two different kind of communication strategies we want to talk about. The first one is, if you have a hearing loss, these are some communication strategies, which means that, this is something that, hopefully you'll see that instead of just saying, huh, or what, but having some different strategies in your belt or somewhere, you can take notes and have it in your phone, or however you want to remember some of these are going to be helpful for you. So the first set of strategies that we're going to talk about is if you have a hearing loss. The second one that we're going to talk about is, how do you communicate with people that have a hearing loss? So you're the other person, right? And how do you communicate better? Because with this communication breakdown, that's really that connection that gets separated, where people start to stay inside, right? They don't want to go out and socialize because, they have that communication breakdown. So we're going to give you some solutions or some strategies to hear, or to communicate better, I should say. So for me, one of the biggest things is, don't hide that you have a hearing loss. And so I always talk about the difference between being aggressive, being passive, or being assertive. And, if I'm the person that has a hearing loss, and let's say I go into the grocery store, I want to make sure that people know that I have a hearing loss, right? And I don't have to wear a t-shirt that says, I have a hearing loss, please speak louder, right? Or anything like that. I don't have to have these big honking hearing aids, but just saying oh, you know what? Excuse me, I can't hear very well because there's a lot of noise. And I actually have a little bit of a hearing loss. Could you say this in a different way? Or can I come a little bit closer, or whatever it is? That's being assertive. Versus being aggressive is, well, they should know that I'm struggling, it's not my fault. Or being passive is, you have no idea what that person's saying, and you're just going to smile and nod. Right. And so we want you to be assertive. We want you to not hide your hearing loss, but make sure that people know. And sometimes that might just be where, you go to a quieter environment, right? We're going to go through some of these different strategies, but actually using your voice to say, I'm having kind of a problem here. Can we make this better, right? So don't try to hide your hearing loss, be assertive. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is some different strategies of saying things versus huh and what, right? So if we're having a conversation and after you tell me the whole story about whatever it was, I'm like, wait, what? What did you say? oh my gosh, that poor person that I'm having a conversation with is going to have to tell me the whole story all over again. So I want people to start thinking about like the other person, right? That's part of the connection is you care about the other person. It's not so much about you, but you're caring about the other person, which means if you care about the other person, not having to tell you the whole entire story again or looking like you weren't paying attention, a different way that you can do that and let them know that you were listening, but maybe you didn't hear a word or so, is again, be assertive, but also say, okay, I heard that you were telling me something about your son's soccer game. And like, what did you say happened again? I missed it. Total different than saying huh or what, right? Because that lets that other person know, you know what? I heard you, like I paid attention to you. It's just that I missed it because I, didn't hear a word or so. And then I kind of got that brain lag where I'm trying to catch up, right? You don't have to explain all of that, but just by telling them what you heard back to them, that's going to help clarify that I was listening. It was just maybe that I missed out. Hopefully that makes sense. So learning to use different things where you're not just having them say the whole entire thing, but you can pick out keywords or you can pick out, or you can summarize what you did hear. That's going to be a lot more helpful. I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Galloway.
Yes. So the next one I'm going to talk about is modifying your listening environment. So this is good. Like for patients with hearing loss, this is something they can modify the environment in their home. I've talked to patients who move into a new house and they're like, you know what? We moved into this new house. It's bare floors, it's bare walls, it's flat surfaces, and I can't hear anything in there. And so we talk about, what you can do to make that better. As far as acoustics, this right here that you can see, these are acoustic panels from Amazon. They're not very thick, but they do help to absorb sound. And actually, there's some in the room that Dr. Phillips is in and some behind Whitney as well. We got all of these from Amazon, but these are just ideas of things. It looks like art, but it helps to absorb sound. The modern aesthetic with hard surfaces is not very good for sound. So rugs, furniture that's kind of cushy, thing that's going to absorb sound is going to help us. Also, having like lower ceilings and things like that. However, if you, let's say you're going out to a restaurant or something and, you're limited to what the restaurant is like, you can also do other things to try to help, like sit with your back to the noise, or, if you are wearing hearing aids, you might have like a forward focus type situation that you can access on your app. And so that will kind of directionally focus your hearing aids right in front of you. Dr. Workman has commented, hello, Dr. Workman. He says, please don't sit me in a table in the middle of the dining room. I would like a booth on the outside of the room because I have trouble hearing. So that's a good idea. Yeah, if you're in the middle of just a busy restaurant, it's better to be off to the side. Sometimes booths can help because they have kind of that, tall sort of divider. And so if it's your house, you can, modify things all you want and it'll help you more than one time. But when you go out to a restaurant or a conference or something, you don't always have all the tools. So you can just try to do, sit somewhere where the lighting is better so you can see someone's face. Just try to help yourself as much as you can. And those are, some things you can do, but in your own home, you could really go wild with it and, try to make it the best acoustic environment that you could, so that it's easier for you at the dinner table or, wherever you're having your family time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just putting this back up from it. It's probably Tim, not because it's Tim's channel, but it's probably Tim. So Tim makes a great point here too, that he's got tinnitus, right? And so sometimes it gets so loud that it's hard to focus. And then it makes him a little bit more stressed out when there's a lot of more people talking at the same time. So again, this is going back to being assertive, right? And making sure that, hey, you know what, even though we're in a group of people or you're at a family function, like what you're saying here, that you can say, you know what, like, can we move this conversation to another area of the home or wherever you are? Because I'm having a hard time hearing with multiple conversations going on at the same time. That's all you have to say, right? Being assertive. So thank you, Tim, for sharing that. I wanted to make sure that we put that up as well. So that way people know what to say in that particular situation. So thank you. Yeah. Go ahead.
Next point is to listen with your eyes, not just your ears. So back to what Tim was just saying, this could be helpful in that situation because you're using more of the visual cues. You're watching someone's mouth to kind of help you understand what they said. I think patients who do not have hearing loss are under the impression that they don't lip read. But if you've ever watched a TV show and the audio has gotten off from the video, you can't stand to watch it because their mouth is moving at a different time than, you know, what you're seeing, and it drives us crazy. And so I always tell patients that even somebody with normal hearing, we're using all of that, you know, to the best of our abilities to help us. So yes, listen with your eyes as well. And, you know, the good lighting also goes with that, making sure, you know, you can see someone. And so that'll just give you a little bit more of a cue as to, you know, what's being said.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Our next tip is to try to determine the source or maybe the reason why you're having a difficulty, maybe with a certain speaker. So, you know, maybe there's an individual, and I feel like we all have had patients say, you know, I can't hear my neighbor. She's so nice, but her voice is so soft, you know, saying things instead of like Dr. Phillips would like, what or huh? I didn't hear you, you know, say like, oh, do you mind saying that just a little bit louder, please? Or if someone talks really fast, I know I have been guilty of this in the past, and my grandmother has actually made the comment to me that she's requested me to slow down. And honestly, I can say that I've taken that, you know, advice to heart when I talk to her, because even though she wears hearing aids, you know, she just needs me to speak a little bit slower. And so just feel encouraged that, you know, when you maybe make this request, often that person, you know, they want to be able to communicate with you. So they are going to try to make that adaptation to do whatever is best. So, you know, if someone has their hands over their mouths, you know, instead of saying like, can you please put your hands down? You know, you can even just say like, oh, I'm sorry. Like I couldn't, you know, see what you were saying. Do you mind repeating that again? I think, again, just advocating for yourself, I think it goes over a lot better than maybe one would think. So. And then the other tip is use assistive hearing technology. So if you have hearing devices, hearing aids, check with your audiologist, make sure that they're, you know, programmed appropriately. There's certain programs that hearing aids have that we can, you know, work and, you know, adjust to the best of, you know, our abilities to help make certain situations like restaurants and family functions and meetings more successful for you. You know, and if you have older technology, it just seems like that is one of the main complaints of, oh, I can hear super well, even the noise, it's just too much for me. You know, that's kind of a good indicator to maybe, you know, try some new technology, because that's one thing manufacturers are always working towards is, you know, how do we make our signal, the speech we want to hear, louder without just amplifying everything else going around. But there's other tools as well, like, you know, mics that you know, you could ask a partner to wear, or Dr. Galloway actually alluded to this with the phone, but there's even things on your iPhone or other apps that you can use that can help transcribe speech, so that if you are in an environment, you know, you can have your hearing aids, you know, and your phone kind of going off of what, you know, is being said. So, you know, ask your audiologist if there's any other tools that you can add to your toolbox to help you be more successful.
Awesome. Okay, so those were communication strategies if you have a hearing loss. Okay, so now we're going to switch to communication strategies when you're talking to somebody with a hearing loss. So for one thing is one of my tips is to gain their attention before you talk. So again, we get lazy with this, and I get totally lazy when I'm at home. I get it, where I'm just rattling something and I'm walking up the stairs, right? Or I'm talking to somebody and I might be eating or whatever it is. And so this is going to be helpful for people that have a hearing loss, because anything that you do to distort your voice or your speech anymore is going to be even harder, right? So getting their attention before you talk is super helpful, whether it's a tap or you say their name out loud, you know, or, you know, you go and face them or whatever it is, because getting that attention gives them almost like that split second to be able to say, oh, I got to pay attention because someone's talking to me, right? Mm-hmm. It's so different when if everybody in this world had normal hearing, we're just like chattering away and we can walk. I mean, we even yell down the hall to each other, right? And hopefully somebody will hear because it's a smaller office, rather than getting up and actually going to talk to that one person. But if Dr. Galloway or Whitney, they're in doing their charting or whatever, and I'm just hollering down the hall, they don't even know who I'm talking to, right? And so if I say, hey, Whitney, and then I wait, and then she says, yeah, or whatever response, then I know I can talk to her, and she kind of is it now in tune, right? Mm-hmm. Whether if I just say, hey, did someone da 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 da, then both of them are like, I don't know who she's talking to, right? So like getting that attention is going to be super helpful before you start talking. The other tip I have is maintain eye contact. And I think this kind of goes back to what we talked about with even like who we are, right? Like we're audiologists. Yes, we help you hear, but we really want to help you connect, right? That couple that comes into the office, well, one's there because they either push them to get their hearing checked, or it could just be the listening, or really they're here because they're not connecting, right? And so if you maintain eye contact when you're talking to somebody, again, it goes back to what I talked to before about letting that other person know that you're right there with them and you're paying attention and you're listening, right? It might just be something that you're not hearing, or you might miss a word here or there, or miss the beginning or end of the word, right? And so maintaining that eye contact is going to be helpful to allow that other person to know that you're paying attention. But secondly, it kind of goes over like, what Dr. Galloway was talking about too, in the fact that you can use visual cues that will supplement what you're hearing. And so whether you missed cat or cap, right, you're going to see the lips say cap, like a ball cap, versus cat, like a dog and cat. And so if you're paying attention and you use that and you're maintaining eye contact, you're going to pick up on visual cues that might actually help you fill in what you're missing as well. And so, or I'm talking from the other person, or let's say that person that has the hearing loss that you're talking to is going to be able to pick that up if you're face to them, right? And they're going to be able to pick up on those things.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And this kind of goes along with eye contact. Keeping your hands away from your mouth. So sort of knowing that this other person is doing more maybe visual cues than somebody else might, don't eat while you're talking, or, do the thing where you're like covering your mouth like this while you're eating and then still trying to talk, because that's, really hard for the person to try to lip read. You don't want to turn away from the person. So I have certain patients that I can tell right when I meet them that they are glued in on my mouth. And so if I turn around to do something on the computer, I should stop talking and then, return talking when I turn back around to them, because it's not fair. They're not going to get it and they can't, see my face. Same things go for like facial hair. So I have had some patients tell me that people that have a beard, it's harder to see the lips and the tongue and what's kind of going on with the mouth. So that can also be helpful if you're, routinely talking to patients with hearing loss or loved ones with hearing loss, and you have a beard that's going to be kind of obscuring your face. That can be hard. The other thing is to speak naturally, not quickly, but also don't try to over enunciate. So like what Whitney was saying, sometimes when people tell you to slow down, then people stop speaking naturally, mm-hmm. and then it's harder to lip read. So if you're just like drawing things out and making really, big mouth motions, it's not genuine, and it's not, what they would typically see. So that can be hard. Mm-hmm. So you want to just try to speak as normally as you can, stay in line of sight with the patient or the loved one with hearing loss, and just, try to make it a fair listening situation. I talk about that a lot with patients. What is a fair listening situation? If you're going up the stairs and talking, not a fair listening situation. So I think sometimes having that language, if you've been married for 30 years, maybe 20 years ago, that was working well for you guys, and now it is not, and you need to, reevaluate mm-hmm. and not do that anymore. But things change over time. So just kind of having that, conversation, get my name, look me in the eye, make sure you're not walking away as you're talking to me. Those can do the patient a big favor, just so they're not, having to ask you all those things.
Another tool is, if you're talking to an individual with hearing loss, is if they, didn't hear you and they ask you to, repeat yourself, maybe try to rephrase it rather than just repeating what you said. So maybe you say something like, I was thinking about going to the store. What do you think about that? And they're like, what? And you can just be like, I was thinking of going to the store today. Would you like to come? Mm-hmm. Things like that. Likely, if you say it once and they didn't hear it, it might just be a better idea just to reframe that thought into a clearer message. And then hopefully they'll be able to hear you better. The other idea is to try to reduce background noise, just like Dr. Galloway was talking about. Try to think if it is a fair listening environment. I tell patients there's some environments that are just hard, regardless if you have the world's best hearing or not. You go to that sports bar, there's a bunch of TVs, there's a bunch of people yelling, there's a football game going on, there's dishes, that's going to be a hard scenario for anybody. But, maybe, you can go to the corner of the room, or maybe if you're at home, like you said, having dinner with family, maybe you go to the living room because it's a little bit quieter in there. So just be thinking of different tools that you can do to help reduce that background noise, even just turning off the television or the radio, just really trying to make that listening environment as ideal as you possibly can to help your loved one be successful.
Yeah, awesome. So, again, if you're watching this show and you've got other strategies that you want to share, put it in the comments or share this out to somebody that has a hearing loss or lives with somebody that has a hearing loss, because hopefully that'll be helpful to them. Because, as we head into this weekend, tomorrow being Valentine's Day, and just relationships, right? It goes back to what we talked about, where, again, I know it's back in 2008 that we talked about that hearing review article, but just remember that people feel disconnected and annoyed and ignored and sad and hurt when you can't hear. And so it is affecting relationships. We have one more comment here I'm going to put from Tim as well. I know that it's kind of funny, but it's not, right? That because he's got a single-sided deafness, like, you have to have your loved one on a particular side. And sometimes they forget. So sometimes they forget, and that happens. So you do what's best for you, but hopefully you can start taking some of these strategies and tips, but then also going back to just being assertive, like just saying, honey, this side, just because they might forget, right? Because hearing loss is unseen. So we have to remember that you don't necessarily see hearing loss, but you can definitely struggle. And you can, now that we've seen, the people that feel annoyed and ignored and sad and hurt, now we see the effects that hearing loss can have on loved ones as well. So be a little bit more aware, be a little bit more assertive. We're hoping that this helps you. If you need us to send you our communication strategies as well, we'd be happy to. So just put a comment in the wherever you're watching, on what platform, and we'll try to see if we can connect with you and get that over to you, or share this out as well. So with that, we hope you guys have a great weekend, and we should be back next week as well. So thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Bye.